I wasn't planning to run into her that morning. I just wanted coffee before class, the kind that burns your tongue and wakes you up faster than it should. The corner cafe was already half full, people hunched over laptops or pretending their croissants were breakfast and not just excuses. She was in line ahead of me. I noticed her before I let myself notice her, like recognizing a song you know but haven't admitted you like. My landlady. Mid-40s, hair tucked into a loose bun, reading glasses perched but not used. She held her phone low, thumbs scrolling, lips pressed like she was quietly disagreeing with whatever she read. She looked up once, and her eyes caught mine. Not for long. Just enough that I had to pretend I was studying the pastry case. When she reached the counter, she said, "Medium latte, extra hot." The barista nodded. "And one blueberry scone. Heated, if you don't mind." I smiled before I realized why, because I knew her order already. Every first Sunday of the month when I slipped my rent check under her door, I'd catch a whiff of blueberry and burnt milk from her kitchen. I ordered after her. Black coffee, no room. My voice cracked a little. She turned, almost surprised. "You live upstairs from me, don't you?" she said. I nodded. "Yeah. Apartment 3B. A pause. Then, "Coffee only? No food?" I shrugged, folding the receipt in my hands until the paper went soft. "Not hungry." She tilted her head. "You'll regret that in about an hour." We ended up waiting for our orders side by side. I could smell her perfume, something faint, maybe lavender, maybe just clean laundry. She tapped her fingers against the counter in a rhythm I couldn't place. My eyes kept slipping toward her hands, neat nails, a single silver ring. "You're in school, right?" she asked. "Trying to be." "What's your subject?" "History." "I guess I like figuring out why people did what they did." "That's dangerous," she said, smiling. "Sometimes people don't even know themselves." Her drink was cold first. She lifted it carefully, like it was fragile. I expected her to just leave. But instead, she hesitated, then added, "You walk back this way." We ended up side by side again, coffee cups warming our hands, shoes scuffing the same uneven sidewalk. I noticed she walked slightly faster than me, like she was used to leading. She said something about the neighborhood changing, about how the rent would climb higher than the buildings. I laughed, maybe too quickly. She glanced sideways at me, then slowed her pace. When we reached the apartment building, I held the door. She brushed past me with a faint smile, and for a second, the hallway felt too quiet. At her door, she turned. "You know," she said, almost teasing, "your rent is due soon." I half laughed, half coughed. "Yeah. First of the month." Her eyes stayed on mine a beat longer than they needed to. "Don't forget." Then she unlocked her door, and the hinge creaked shut behind her. I stood there longer than I should have, staring at the chipped paint on her frame, the faint smell of blueberries drifting out. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A new message. Unknown number. "You forgot your napkin at the cafe." I looked down. She was right. My folded paper, the one I'd been worrying in my hands, wasn't there anymore. And now, she had it. Her text sat on my screen longer than it should have. A napkin. That was all. But she'd signed it L. Not, "Your landlady," not her full name, just a single letter. Intimate in a way it shouldn't have been. I typed back, then erased it. I thought of a dozen versions. "Thanks, guess I owe you one," even a dumb smiley face. None felt right. In the end, I didn't send anything. That night, I heard her footsteps above me. I always did. The faint creak of her floorboards around 10 p.m., the kettle hissing near 11. Ordinary sounds, except now I was listening differently. The next day, I ran into her on the stairwell. She was carrying a potted plant, small leaves spilling over the edge, dirt smudged on her thumb. "Can you hold the door?" she asked. I caught it, and she brushed past, the plant bumping my chest. She paused halfway up. "Do you ever feel like plants die just to remind us we're not good at caring for things?" I laughed, though it didn't sound like me. "Mine don't even make it a week." She smiled, but softer this time. "Divorce papers are quicker than that." The words slipped out of her mouth like she hadn't meant to say them. She kept walking before I could answer, but the air felt changed. Divorce. That explained the empty wine bottles in the recycling, the spare set of shoes that never moved. That evening, she knocked on my door. Not loud. Just enough. "Do you have a screwdriver?" she asked. "The cabinet hinge won't stay put." I followed her into her apartment. It smelled faintly of lemon soap and coffee grounds. The kitchen light was too bright, throwing sharp edges across the counter. As I worked on the hinge, she leaned against the opposite counter, sipping tea. "You live alone?" she asked. I nodded. "Just me. Easier that way." Her gaze lingered. "Easier, maybe. Not better." The screwdriver slipped. My knuckles scraped against the cabinet, leaving a red line. She was there instantly, reaching for my hand. Her fingers were warm, cooler at the tips. She held it longer than she needed to before pulling away. "You should be more careful," she said, voice low. I wanted to say something back, something about how careful I'd been all this time, and how it wasn't working. Instead, I muttered, "Guess I'm not good with hinges either." She smiled, almost amused, but her eyes were tired. She set her cup down and stood closer than before. "You remind me of someone I knew when I was younger," she said quietly. Too honest for his own good. I didn't ask what happened to him. I didn't want to know. When the hinge was fixed, I wiped my hands on a towel. She walked me to the door, then touched my sleeve, not gripping, just brushing the fabric, as if to check I was really there. "Thank you," she said. The touch lasted only a second. But I carried it with me down the hall like a weight I didn't want to put down. I started noticing her routines more than my own. The way her blinds opened around 9, the kettle whistled a few minutes after. The muffled sound of her shoes across the hallway floorboards, measuring time better than a clock. That evening, she knocked again. Not with need this time. More, casually. "Do you have any sugar?" she asked, holding out an empty jar like proof. I handed her mine, but she lingered in the doorway. "You cook?" "Not really," I said. "Microwave and takeout." She tilted her head, half smiling. "Figures." I almost asked her to come in, but the word sat heavy in my throat. Instead, she stepped inside on her own, walking straight toward my kitchen counter. She set down the jar, glanced around. The clutter, the unwashed cup in the sink. My life, exposed. "You live like a student," she murmured, fingers brushing the edge of a stack of unopened mail. "I am a student." Her eyes flicked to me. Held. Then moved away. I made tea, mostly to have something to do with my hands. She sat at the table, tracing a circle on the wood grain with one finger. The silence was too full. I poured, slid a mug to her. Our hands touched in the exchange. Neither of us pulled back fast enough. Then the knock came. Fast, impatient. My friend, Sam, stood at the door. Backpack slung over one shoulder, eyes darting between us. "Dude, you weren't answering your phone." He looked at her, then at me. "Sorry, didn't realize you had company." I felt heat rise to my neck. She smiled politely, stood. "I should go. Thanks for the sugar." Her voice was lighter than before, but her shoulders tightened as she passed Sam. He gave me a look I didn't want to interpret. When she was gone, the apartment felt wrong. Sam talked about something, class schedules, a party next week, but my head was still in the hallway, following her retreat. Later, after he left, I found her jar of sugar still on my counter. Empty. She hadn't taken it back. The next day, I ran into her in the mailroom. She wore a gray sweater, sleeves pushed to her elbows, hair down this time. I held out the jar, almost like an offering. "You forgot this." She looked at it, then at me. A pause. Or maybe I didn't. The way she said it, flat, but not cold, made my chest tighten. We stood there, surrounded by other people's envelopes and junk flyers, and for a second the whole building felt like it had shrunk around us. I started to say something, her name, maybe, or why are we doing this, but the words tangled. Instead, she stepped closer. Just enough that her shoulder brushed mine as she reached for her mail. She didn't move away right away. Neither did I. I thought she might turn, right there. I thought I might. But then she shifted back, cleared her throat, and left me with nothing but the faint smell of her sweater and the hollow ache of almost. It happened on the walk back from the corner store. Not planned. I'd gone for milk, she'd been out for bread. We met at the intersection, and instead of a nod, she fell into step beside me. The evening was cool, street lamps humming faintly. She carried a paper bag against her chest, fingers tapping the edge. "You always walk this slow?" she asked. I smiled, shrugging. "Guess I like to make it last." She laughed, short, then gone. We walked in silence. Our shoes scraped the pavement in sync. I wanted to ask her in, wanted to stretch this nothingness into something, but my throat stayed tight. Halfway down the block, she stopped at a low brick wall. Set her bag down. Saturday. I followed. The night was quiet, save for a dog barking far off and the hum of tires on asphalt. She folded her hands, stared at them. "You know," she said, "people notice." The words landed heavy. "Notice what?" "You and me. The time we spend. The looks." I felt my chest tighten. "Does it bother you?" Her jaw worked, but no words came right away. Finally, "It scares me." She didn't look at me when she said it. She looked at the dark windows across the street, like waiting for someone else to answer. "Why?" I asked, softer than I meant. Her voice was low. "Because I've already lost enough. A husband. Friends who chose his side. I can't," she broke off, pressing her palms together. "And then there's you. Too young. Too open. Like you don't know what this could cost." I let out a breath. My knee bounced. "I think about it all the time," I admitted. "Not the cost. Just, you." That made her turn. Her eyes found mine, and for a second, neither of us moved. The air between us felt sharper, like the night had thinned to just this bench, these words. She shook her head, half in disbelief. "You shouldn't say things like that." "Why not?" "Because I believe you," she whispered. I didn't touch her. I didn't dare. But my hand slid close enough on the wall that if she wanted, she could bridge the gap. Her gaze dropped there, lingered. Then back to me. "I haven't felt," she stopped. Swallowed. Tried again. "Not in years. Not even when I should have." And now, she let the sentence die. Her hand twitched. Not reaching. Not pulling back. Just suspended in the space between us, trembling slightly. I thought she might let it fall on mine. I thought I might take it. But then a car turned the corner, headlights spilling over us. She pulled back fast, reaching for her bag. "We should go," she said, standing too quickly. The walk home was silent. My chest was still pounding when she disappeared into her apartment without looking back. I stood in the hallway, milk sweating through the paper bag, replaying her words until they didn't sound like words anymore. Just a confession hanging unfinished in the air. For 3 days, I didn't see her. No footsteps overhead, no kettle hissing late at night. Her blind stayed drawn, even in the mornings. I told myself she was busy, that it meant nothing, but the silence pressed down like another tenant in the building. On the 4th day, I caught her in the lobby. She was dressed sharper than usual, blazer, hair pinned back, phone in hand. She nodded at me, brisk, as if we were nothing more than tenant and landlady. "You need anything fixed?" she asked, already halfway toward the door. "No," I said. My voice cracked. She smiled, polite, but her eyes didn't meet mine. Then she was gone. That night, I almost texted her. Just, "Are you okay?" Simple. But my thumb hovered over send until the words blurred. I deleted them. The following afternoon, a boy showed up at the building. Maybe 12, maybe 13. He looked like her, same sharp chin, same restless hands. He carried a backpack, knocking on her door without hesitation. She opened it, ushered him in quickly, glancing down the hall as if to check who might see. I froze on the stairs, milk in one hand, keys in the other. A son. She had a son. It made sense, of course. The extra shoes by her door. The photos turned face down on her bookshelf that I hadn't dared ask about. But knowing and seeing were different things. That night, her footsteps upstairs sounded different, 2 sets, lighter and heavier. The boy's laughter echoed once, quickly muffled. The distance grew without her saying a word. She stopped lingering in the hallway. Stopped knocking on my door for sugar, for screwdrivers, for anything at all. And still, I caught myself listening. For the kettle. For the squeak of her window sliding open. For something to remind me she was still there. One evening, I heard voices outside. I stepped onto the fire escape, pretending to smoke a cigarette I didn't have. She was below, standing with a man I didn't recognize. Mid-40s, tall, the kind of presence that filled a space even when silent. He leaned close as he spoke, his hand brushing her elbow. She didn't move away. Jealousy hit fast, then shame right behind it. Who was I to expect anything? Who was I to want? Later, when the man left, I saw her stand alone in the parking lot, arms folded tight, head tilted back toward the sky. I almost called out. I almost climbed down, stood with her, asked her why she'd pulled away, why she'd let me close just to vanish again. Instead, I stayed frozen at the window. Back inside, I opened my phone. Wrote, "I missed the sound of your kettle." I stared at it until the letters blurred. My thumb hovered. Then I locked the screen and slipped the phone face down on the table. The message sat there, unsent. And so did I. It was late when she knocked. Past midnight. The hallway light above her door flickered, casting her face in broken shadows. She didn't wait for me to speak. "Do you have tea?" Her voice was steady, but her eyes weren't. I let her in. My apartment was dim, only the glow from the stove clock and a single lamp. She moved to the kitchen table like she'd done it 100 times before. I boiled water, hands clumsy, heart too loud. When I set the mugs down, she wrapped her fingers around hers but didn't drink. "I shouldn't be here," she said finally. "Then why are you?" She flinched, just slightly. "Because I don't know how not to." The words hung there. My throat felt dry. She exhaled, long and shaky. "I thought pulling away would fix it. I thought it was the only way. But every time I hear you on the stairs, every time I smell coffee in the morning, it's like," she stopped, shaking her head. "I don't get to want things anymore. Not like this." Her tea sat untouched. I watched the steam fade. I leaned forward, elbows on the table. My voice came out softer than I meant. "What if I want to be wanted? That made her look at me. Really look. No teasing. No deflection. Just two people too close to pretending anymore. She blinked hard, her mouth trembling like the words were fighting to stay unsaid. You're too young. I'm old enough to know what this is. And what is it? I didn't answer right away. I reached for my mug, but my hand shook. Finally, I set it down and said, "It's the only thing that feels real right now." Her eyes closed. She pressed her palms together like in prayer, then dropped them to the table. You don't know the weight of me. The history. A son who barely looks at me. A marriage that took more than it gave. I'm not easy to hold. I swallowed hard. I'm not asking for easy. The silence stretched. She rubbed at the corner of her eye, then laughed once, dry, humorless. You're making this very hard to walk away from. I pushed my hand across the table, not quite touching hers, but close enough. Close enough she could choose. Her fingers hovered. Shaking slightly. And then, finally, she let them fall into mine. Not gripping. Not desperate. Just a quiet, human weight. She whispered, "Okay." The word was small, but it felt like the world cracked open under it. We didn't kiss. We didn't move closer than that. But her hand in mine was louder than anything I'd ever heard. And for the first time in weeks, the silence between us wasn't something to fear. It didn't happen all at once. No switch flipping, no fireworks. Just small things that, over time, made the space between us feel less like a tightrope and more like ground. She still kept her blinds half closed in the mornings, but sometimes I caught her opening them just enough for me to see the outline of her mug against the window. 8:47, like clockwork. My black coffee. Her latte. Different cups, but the same steam drifting into the day. We started sharing quiet moments more than conversations. A walk to the store. Tea at my table, or hers. Sitting on the bench down the block, not saying much, but not needing to. Her son came around some weekends. She didn't hide him. She introduced us without ceremony, like it was inevitable. He looked at me curiously, but didn't ask questions. Maybe he didn't need to. Sometimes guilt still showed on her face. In the way she'd fall silent mid-sentence, or glance at the door like someone might be listening. But then she'd smile at me over her mug, tired but real, and it was enough. One evening, we sat on that same brick wall where she once confessed what scared her. The air was cool again, leaves skittering across the sidewalk. She leaned into me, her shoulder brushing mine. You walk slower now, she said. Guess I don't want it to end, I replied. She chuckled softly, shaking her head. Still too honest for your own good. I wanted to tell her everything, how the silence used to ache, how the nights felt heavier when she pulled away, how just hearing her kettle hiss through the ceiling made me feel less alone. But I didn't. Some things stayed better unsaid, carried quietly between us. Instead, I reached for her hand, the same way I had at the kitchen table. And this time, she didn't hesitate. Her fingers curled around mine, warm, certain. We sat there until the streetlights buzzed on, until her son's bedroom light flicked upstairs, until the world reminded us we had places to be. When she finally stood, she gave me that same half-smile she'd given the first day in the cafe. Only now, it wasn't hiding anything. Tea tomorrow? She asked. Always, I said. She squeezed my hand once before letting go, the warmth lingering long after she disappeared inside. I walked back to my apartment, slower than usual, my coffee mug waiting unwashed in the sink. For the first time, it didn't feel like a sign of loneliness. Just a routine waiting to be shared. And I thought about her words, the way she teased once, "Your rent is due," in kisses. It wasn't about rent. It never was. It was about showing up. Day after day. Cup after cup. The kind of payment no one else would ever understand.